Hey, it's me, the Soy Pill. If you're like me, you have fond memories of the classic late-night political comedy shows. Shows like The Colbert Report, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, and that's it, it's just these two. For years, these guys were at the top of their game. It's who liberals and left-wingers went to laugh, feel vindicated in their beliefs, and if you were 12-year-old me, to get their news, because I was too intellectually lazy to read. But sometime around the 2016 election, something happened. Jon Stewart went off the air, Colbert went to The Late Show, and a handful of other shows scurried to fill the void. And maybe, if you're a brain-dead, knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing retard, you enjoyed some of these. But for me, none of these shows ever got close to replicating the magic of the powerhouse duo. Now, Jon Stewart just came back to The Daily Show, which reignited my nostalgic memories and my hate for the shows that tarnished his legacy. Today, I want to look at the decline of the late-night political comedy shows. Were they really better 15 years ago? Why don't the successors have the sauce? Does Jon Stewart's return signal a revival? Who the fuck cares? Jon Stewart took over The Daily Show in 1999. Formerly a pop culture comedy show, Stewart made the show a lot more political and news-focused, while keeping the comedy elements. Colbert was a regular correspondent, and in 2005, Colbert spun off into The Colbert Report, a similar comedy news outlet where he played a character that mocked the pompous and ill-informed Republican pundit. Some of you post-9/11 babies or foreigners may not realize how big these guys were back in the day. Back in the Bush era, if I wanted biting political commentary on all the breaking news, I either had to go to my racist uncle on Thanksgiving or these two. Now, obviously this wasn't the universal experience. Others maybe watched Bill Maher or some other pundit. Conservatives had Rush Limbaugh and other radio talk show hosts, but for me and many others that I know, these two were the gold standard. I adored these guys growing up. They were quintessential infotainment. They made me laugh, they made me feel smart for watching them, and most importantly, they were able to articulate the grievances that I had with the political world in ways that I couldn't. Imagine always hearing about the Iraq War or the anti-gay marriage crowd, but when you turn on the news to hear your side of the argument, you get some droll, mundane talking head on CNN or, God forbid, C-SPAN, debating the topic with the enthusiasm of a damp towel and the cadence of a dripping faucet.
Have whatever church, synagogue,
When I heard about government injustices or Republican hypocrisies, I didn't want to go to the news and listen to some boring asshole ramble on about the legal ramifications. I wanted someone to call it bullshit and highlight how stupid it was.
There's considerable disagreement among sociologists as to what the consequences of raising a child in a single-sex family, whether that is harmful to the child or not.
May I approach the Grinch? Dick, bench.
Filling that void is exactly what made Stewart and Colbert amazing. They gave me a voice in the mainstream. And even though they grew more popular during the Obama years, I think what really made them special was their ability to speak truth to power during the Iraq War Bush era, where conservative talking points and Fox News dominated the mainstream narrative. And funny enough, the piece of my audience that can absolutely relate to this feeling are conservatives. As of the past decade or so, the culture has shifted more and more left. Conservatives have had arguably less representation of their views in the mainstream. Even Fox News, as right-leaning as it is, can't express a lot of the frustrations that conservatives are feeling, as well as someone like Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, or Matt Walsh. These guys are under the safety of their own private company, and they don't have the veil of respectability politics like most news anchors.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Yeah, this kind of well-calibrated language is going to win over those independent voters.
They give their takes with the disgust, anger, joy, and enthusiasm that matches what your average Republican feels when they see the news. These pundits channel the energy of their voters and make them feel heard better than any news anchor. And you can see this reflected in the way that the fans talk about them. Back in the day, many people wanted Jon Stewart to run for president because he really understood America like no politician did. And I still see many Republicans call for Ben Shapiro to do the same. The difference, of course, being that Stewart and Colbert are actual comedians with comedy backgrounds, while the Daily Wire folks are a bunch of failed writers and actors.
What the fuck, Nicole? Are you fucking your brother?
No!
Stewart and Colbert's experience in stand-up and improv were integral to their hilarious writing and goofy characters, but their comedic chops and wit were never more obvious than when they would go on Fox News for interviews. Not only were they able to push back on the Fox narratives without a script or team of writers to back them up, but they were constantly cracking jokes, making the hosts look like fools, and even making the Fox News production team laugh.
You take cheap shots all the time, but you defend those cheap shots.
Let me tell you
do
something.
it very well.
That's not the only thing you like about me. I'm like a shot of Levittown, right in your ass like a B-12. Boom.
I think I'm going to commit suicide.
Speaking truth to power or making fun of the news isn't a surefire way to be entertaining. The reason that these two shows worked is because they were helmed by two incredibly talented comedians. You can't just take this infotainment formula, watch the news, write a couple jokes, and throw anyone in front of a script and have a golden goose. Speaking of which, a little before the 2016 election, both of my favorite political pundits went off the air. Jon Stewart said that he got tired of it and wanted to spend more time with his kids. Meanwhile, Colbert said that he killed his show off because he sensed that the country no longer savored constant divisiveness.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Jon Stewart continued his political activism, famously fighting for legislation that helped the 9/11 first responders. Colbert went to take over The Late Show, but with the election season pumping up, there was a void to be filled for comedic political commentary. Jon Stewart was replaced by Trevor Noah on The Daily Show, and many former Daily Show employees and others started their own talk shows. The mother spider had been stomped, and a bunch of little freaks came scurrying out. Now, there's a lot of unfunny liberal political commentators, and for that reason, I'm going to try to focus on the small handful of them that were strictly political. Everybody hates James Corden or Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon. What is it with Jims? For this video, I want to focus on the contrast between old Stewart and Colbert and the shows that tried to emulate them. Now, I'm sure you can already guess, I think that these shows suck. I think they suck really bad. I may be kind of like one of them a little bit, but in my opinion, none of these come even close to the two original shows. And because I love you guys so much, I sat down with a bottle of Tylenol and forced myself to watch all of these shows in back-to-back marathons so that I could detail just how far they fall short of the originals. Reason 1, bad delivery. The first and most obvious problem is that the hosts just aren't as funny as Stewart and Colbert. Now, of course, this is subjective, but I think the most glaring difference between old and new is the delivery. Stewart was special because of how animated and indignant he would get.
This pretending Ron Paul doesn't exist for some reason has been going on for weeks.
We haven't mentioned, and we should, Rick Santorum, who did really surprisingly well for the amount of money and resources he had.
Rick Santorum? He didn't get half of what Ron Paul got. He lost to the guy who lost so bad he dropped out of the race.
Sure, he's playing it up and probably rehearsed it several times, so it's all an act, but his incredulity and rage really helped with his comedic delivery. And Colbert really committed to the silly Republican host shtick.
But liberals are always trying to sully the things our founding fathers did by talking about the things our founding fathers did.
So much so that some Republican viewers actually thought that he was right-leaning. But most of these clowns just meander through their jokes like it's a chore. They rarely get as animated as Stewart or as ridiculous as Colbert, and when they do, it feels much more fake and scripted.
Advocates say children as young as 12 have been married with the consent of their parents.
It's usually a way for them to circumvent the statutory rape that would be attached to that if they're pregnant.
What? That is not how criminal justice works. When we catch a burglar, he doesn't get to marry the house.
Very few things Donald Trump has been consistent on. He's changed his opinions on everything from healthcare to the minimum wage to the spelling of his own name. That's real. He once misspelled his own name on Twitter.
Their delivery is wooden and stilted, and with how smug they're being, their monologues really drone on. Seth Meyers even has a dedicated segment called Seth Tries Really Hard Not to Lose His Shit, and of course, he gets nowhere close to as animated as Stewart.
Trump is the pro-choice candidate? Are you out of here? I'm sorry, I believe you are mistaken. Your statements are misleading, and you are failing to provide an accurate, good faith analysis of the facts. You're inverting the truth for political purposes and gaslighting your viewers by grossly misrepresenting the details of the situation. Let me put it another way. You're a piece of Well, I failed. This has been Seth Tries Really Hard Not to Lose His
I think the only one of these hosts who gets even a little close to matching the energy is John Oliver.
All those opposed say no? No. Opinion chair, the noes have it.
Are you fucking kidding me? That happened 4 days ago.
Which is why he's my special little baby, and it's okay that you're the inferior British John, I still love you. Despite all of these shows trying to emulate the Stewart Colbert formula, the only show that ever felt like a successor to me was the YouTube show Some More News, with former Cracked employee Cody Johnston. Around 2018 and 19, his show did a great job of cataloging the hypocrisies and wrongdoings of the Trump admin and Republican Party, and Cody plays a great, disheveled and upset news anchor. Now, ironically, I do think the show has become a little more stilted and forced lately, but I still recommend that you subscribe and go check it out. Now, you may be wondering, if part of Colbert's old success was his delivery and comedic chops, how could his new show be bad? It's not like he lost his wit or comedic timing.
So look forward to some hot new Biden social content like Ermagerd Trumpers Hurtler. ICANN has youth votes. And of course, for the very online, Skibbity Biden.
Skibbity Biden. Skibbity Biden. Skibbity Biden. Joe. Skibbity Biden. Hitler's language. Trump is using Hitler's language.
Donald Trump and Trump derangement syndrome. The MAGA crowd invented a term called Trump derangement syndrome, or TDS. It gets thrown around as a reaction to the waterfall of criticism that Trump has received from every single outlet imaginable. The implication is that most of this criticism is unfounded, and people are just brainwashed by the media into hating him. I think most people who use this term are just doing it to deflect criticism. He was the president for 4 years and constantly said and did dumb shit.
Hillary wanted to put up wind, and they say the noise causes cancer. You tell me that one, okay?
So of course people are going to be holding his feet to the fire and talking about it, especially late night political talk shows with daily episodes. It's like saying that FDR had Hitler derangement syndrome because he talked about him all the time. But there are some people who I think fit the description of TDS, where Trump lives rent-free in their heads. They'll bring him up as a non sequitur, refuse to acknowledge him as funny in any way, blame random unrelated problems on him.
Everybody's always blaming me for everything.
And even buy into fake news about him as long as it makes him look bad. Just to help you distinguish, if someone is upset that Trump's Supreme Court picks overturned Roe v. Wade, that's not the Donald syndrome. That's a very legitimate reason to be upset and hate Donald Trump if you're pro-choice. But say you're watching the new Fallout show with your friend, and randomly in episode 3, for no reason at all, he turns to you and says, "This is what the world is going to look like soon if Trump gets elected again." That came out of nowhere. This show has nothing to do with Donald Trump. You were thinking about Trump before that scene even came on. That's the Donald syndrome. So how does this TDS tie in with these talk shows? Well, I think the hosts and the writers for these shows had a little TDS. Like I said, he was president. He did a lot of dumb shit. And of course these guys were going to cover it. But it wasn't just major legislation or speeches. It was every single thing. The way he walked, the way he ordered ice cream, every comment he made, every fucking tweet. And there's one major problem with making 90% of your show revolve around the entire day-to-day of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is way fucking funnier than all of you. It sucks to admit this as someone who detests almost everything this guy does, but Donald Trump is fucking hilarious. It's funny when he makes jokes.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
He's funny on accident when he rambles.
They want electric planes. What happens if the sun isn't shining while you're up in the air? Well, sir, I told you there'd be problems, sir. No, they want electric everything. They want electric boats. The problem, the boats, they don't float. Because the battery is so heavy, it sinks the boat. They say, we don't care, we want them anyway.
When he's racist.
Oh, look at my African-American over here. Look at him.
When he plays tennis, when he tweets, when he dances, when he looks directly at the sun. Donald Trump is just an all-around funny guy. Like me, you can not like his policies or even hate him for the damage that he's done to the country and various groups in it. But so much of what he does is just plain funny. It makes me wish he'd have a Vegeta redemption arc and become a Democrat, just so we could use his sheer power of personality. I can fix him. You might think that using Donald Trump would be a boon to these comedy shows, since there's so much material to work off of. But instead of writing clever jokes, these guys just used Trump's absurdness as a crutch.
In the time of Trump, is it more difficult than it was when you were on Saturday Night Live?
It's more difficult in the time of Trump for good comedians, and it's way easier for bad comedians.
Putting the spotlight on Trump was a death sentence for all of these shows. Their normal formula was taking a political event and lampooning it. But the things that Donald Trump said or did were already so absurd or funny in their own right that no joke could improve upon it. Take a look at this hilarious Trump moment and compare it to the joke they try to make.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
It's a nice line, you know, you'll go to jail thing, but it's not true because Hillary's got a lot of friends on Wall Street, and those people never go to jail.
Or how about Donald Trump's famous catchphrase, fake news? Can Seth Meyers possibly one-up that?
I will say, I do hope "you are fake news" makes it into lexicon as a sassy comeback. You're the worst member of this sorority, Kaylee. Well, you, Claire, are fake news.
For idiots, it's an easier time because you go, well, that guy's the idiot, not me.
It didn't help that everyone was talking about him so much, so almost every joke they tried to make was rote and tired almost immediately. Making fun of his hands, calling him Donald Drumpf like it was some sort of own, Mango, Mussolini, President Cheeto. It all fucking sucked.
The presidential race right now getting bigger by the day. A possible new contender, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz.
So it would be Mr. Pumpkin Spice Latte taking on an actual pumpkin spice latte.
And it's not exclusively a Donald Trump problem. Take a look at this Alex Jones clip and the horrible joke that Samantha Bee follows it up with.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
Of course. Noted Sandy Hook truther and moon landing denier Alex Jones, who despite protests got approval to build a bullshit pipeline straight into the president-elect's brain.
You can even see in the YouTube most replayed feature that everyone is replaying Alex Jones being funny. No one gives a shit about the joke that Samantha Bee made. Alex Jones off the cuff is funnier than Samantha Bee and her entire writing staff combined. What is it with bees? These shows pick the absolute worst time to come into existence. Long gone are the days of banal C-SPAN broadcasts where you can have a whole segment around someone doing some gaffe. Now this crazy bullshit happens 10 times a day, every day, forever. Not a single joke from any of these shows will ever be remembered in comparison to the funniest Trump moments. Now, the formula itself wasn't completely broken. I think Some More News was able to be funny while covering Trump, but there's a huge pitfall that they avoid that shows like The Daily Show or Seth Meyers fall right into. They don't write their show the night before, or God forbid, hours after something happens.
Donald Trump held his first solo press conference as president. It just happened, actually. We're recording this in the early afternoon. It literally just finished. What I'm saying is this is fresh.
The writers were already on the back foot, but putting themselves in 24-hour time crunches was a surefire way to write a bunch of easy, lame, unfunny jokes.
Got 306 electoral college votes. I wasn't supposed to get 222. They said there's no way to get 222. 230 is impossible. 270, which you need, that was laughable. We got 306. I guess it was the biggest electoral college win since Ronald Reagan.
Actually, sir, Barack Obama got 365 electoral votes in 2008. You only got 306. Wait a second. Wait, do you think 306 is larger than 365? Wow. Betsy DeVos works quick. That's called the DeVos effect.
That guy's the idiot, not me.
Writing shows 12 hours before they air about events that are almost impossible to make funnier is a formula for disaster, and a lot of these shows follow it. Even the shows with more lead time succumb to poor, smug delivery or TDS. Really, I could end the video here. These two things alone explain why these shows failed. But fortunately for you, I hate these guys way more than that, so I'm gonna shit on their entire shtick. Reason 3, bad Trump impressions. Since we were looking at Trump, let's address how a bunch bunch of these shows have terrible Trump impressions. Just so you have a metric of comparison, I'm going to put Shane Gillis and James Austin Johnson in S tier. These guys are good not only because they sound like him, but because they emulate the chaotic nature and cadence of his speech perfectly.
It's going down the chute. You've never seen it so bad, but we love our country. What a terrible place.
Abu. We could hear him crying. I said, Abu, don't cry. Let me tell you something. Abu cried. He cried quite a bit. I wouldn't have cried.
Alec Baldwin is the metric for F, because it doesn't sound good, and he's reading cringy SNL dialogue.
Hola, Presidente Nieto.
Guy who's gonna pay for the wall says what?
Okay.
No, guy who's gonna pay for the wall says what? But Steve, I think that was bad. Was that bad?
And since I don't want to be too mean to Alec Baldwin, just in case, I'll add an even worse tier. H for Hillary.
You know, this is a huge election. You never know what might happen. Let's get rid of the people that don't agree with us and only talk to the people who do.
Trevor Noah's Trump impression is, of course, bad.
There was this big earthquake, lots of people were trapped, we're gonna do our best, but expect the worst. I'm not saying move on.
But I will give him some leeway. He has a South African accent, but he still manages to do that New Yorker gravel that I can never get down perfectly.
Look at that wall, so beautiful. And am I correct in assuming no Mexicans? None? That's right.
So I'll give him a solid C+ for his effort. Unless, of course, some retard said it was the best thing ever on a shitty talk show like The View.
Trevor, you do the best Donald Trump impression.
Oh, no.
D. Seth Meyers cannot do the voice or the cadence well at all, and he always brings it out in some cringy situation joke where Trump is doing something so silly. XD, what a goofball that Trump guy is.
Hannity even tries to move on, and Trump is like, no, wait, I'm not done confessing, Sean. I have the right to take stuff, be it classified documents or candy bars to the checkout that I hide in what I call my shoplifting coat. All right, let's move on, Mr. President. Before we do Sean Zagnut, it's a little melted, but it's still very delicious. Crunchy peanut butter.
He also has the issue of laughing at way too many of his own jokes, but we'll get to that. Colbert's Trump impression is the absolute worst.
You see a no-talent guy like Colbert, there's nothing funny about what he says. What he says is filthy. And you have kids watching. It only builds up my base. It only helps me. People like him.
Not only is it off cadence, drawn out, and annoying, but he feels the need to read every single word of Trump's tweets. No matter how funny a Trump tweet is, Colbert will turn it into a fucking chore to get through.
In addition to Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama will most likely be hit much harder than anticipated, looking like one of the largest hurricanes ever, already Category 5. Be careful, God bless everyone.
And for some reason, his audience claps like seals every time he says ...
Then, a long time later, they started to report really large numbers like 3,000, ... Please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow ...
I'm going to give you a super F.
I couldn't find Hassan Minhaj doing an impression of Trump, because it turns out he doesn't like to talk about him on the show.
But yours is unique. You don't do a lot of Donald Trump. You don't actually talk about Donald Trump.
Well, I treat it like, you know how there's characters in the Harry Potter books? And a lot of them don't mention Lord Voldemort? But a lot of people in late night are saying we have to say the V word. For me, he's the man who shall not be named.
Leave it to Hassan to do the most liberal thing ever and make a Harry Potter analogy. For that, you get an H, for made a stupid Harry Potter analogy. Reason 4, stupid run-on jokes. A lot of these shows make run-on jokes. Often, they are comparison jokes, or simile jokes that are self-indulgent, distract from the thing they're actually covering, and very, very weak. For those of you who forgot 4th grade English, a simile is when you say something is like something else. Now, comparisons are a comedy staple, of course, but these shows rely far too heavily on them, and really stretch the comparisons. Simile jokes might go like this.
Trump tried to delay 10 times and failed every time. It's like when my dentist's office Catches me lying to cancel an appointment. Hi, sorry, can't make my cleaning today. My aunt is in town. No, she's not. Yeah, she is. What's her name? Stormy Daniels?
The joke goes on forever. It barely relates to the original point at all, and no, Seth, it's not relatable that you're lying to cancel an appointment. You're an adult going to the dentist. You can cancel whenever you want. You're not a 10-year-old playing hooky from school.
Even John Boehner, the man once ranked the 8th most conservative man in Congress, wasn't right-wing enough. It's like crack telling meth that it's not addictive enough. Yo, man, you gotta step your game up, Crystal. You make teeth fall out, big deal. I took down Whitney Houston. Too soon?
Wow. That was terrible. Do you even remember the original point he was trying to make? How about the name of the politician he was talking about? Yeah, I didn't think so.
How is it possible that Thomas has not recused himself from this case? His spouse was directly involved. It'd be like if I told a joke in my monologue about a Florida woman who tried to smuggle meth onto a flight inside a pet snake, but didn't tell you that woman was my wife, and the meth was mine. Now you know why I talk so fast. Trump?
Sorry, what? Would be like, who? What the fuck are you talking about, Seth? I almost put one of these jokes in this video. I was gonna do a segment called Hanging from a Pull-Up Bar Until Samantha Bee Makes Me Laugh. And it would have been like a Saw situation with all the sped up shots and the music, but then I realized that it ran on too long and distracted from the points I was trying to make. So if the voices in my head can give me the foresight to cut these jokes, why can a room full of writers not tell each other to do it? Maybe it's because if you watch these interviews with Seth's writers, they're not very witty or charismatic, and then they all get together in a writer's room to vomit drivel onto a piece of paper and call it a script. Despite anything good I have to say about John Oliver, he is the king of these run-on distracting jokes. Not just because they're usually non sequiturs, but because they always go on so long that you lose track of what the point was in the first place.
You simply don't get to walk out of an interview. That kind of behaviour is reserved for Adam Driver in an NPR interview about Marriage Story, and that is only because Adam Driver can do whatever the fuck he wants. Step on my throat, Adam Driver, you rudely large man. Break my fingers, you brooding mountain.
I wouldn't want anyone with the coronavirus serving me my next meal, unless, of course, that person was Adam Driver, because infecting me with dessert is very much on my running list of things Adam Driver can do to me. Oh, I'm sorry. You thought I'd stop the Adam Driver bit because I'm stuck at home now? You were wrong about that. And yes, I know my wife can hear me. That's part of it. Sneeze in my McFlurry, you pensive bison. Ravage my lungs, you relentless hillock.
Donald Trump running for a second term? That's like if Adam Driver tried to have sex with me right after he finished sucking my cock. I just came, Adam Driver. You can't bounce on my dick right now. I don't care how sexy you are, you stallion of a man. My penis is too limp for you, Adam. Reason 5. Weird, disingenuous audience interactions. Since these shows are in front of a live audience, there's bound to be a little improv. But sometimes you can tell that these reactions are expected and scripted. Watch Trevor Noah pretend like he's responding to the audience groaning by explaining the double meaning of his joke when that reaction was clearly scripted.
John Boehner has final say about which laws come in and which laws don't. He's basically the bouncer at Club Congress. Which is probably the worst club ever. First of all, there's hardly any woman in the club. There's always a bunch of old guys talking about laying pipe, and everyone at the club has AIDS. That's, AIDS, the people that help you, you are
This Hassan Minhaj scripted audience moment is even more insulting because the production value for this show is so obviously high, with the camera set and the fancy graphics, and Hassan reading it like he's practiced it 1,000 times.
You don't get into Harvard. Maybe it's because getting into Harvard is insanely hard, and it's only getting harder. This isn't UC Santa Cruz, man. Really, is that where you guys draw the line? UC Santa Cruz? Their mascot is the banana slugs, you guys. You need $80 and a pulse to get into UC Santa Cruz.
Even when the audience interactions are genuine, it's still pretty annoying. Seth Meyers is constantly wasting time in his show laughing at jokes that I know he's rehearsed before and aren't that funny.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem revealed in her upcoming memoir that she killed her puppy. An ally to former President Trump said it's impossible for Noem to be selected as Trump's vice president. After all, they can't have her standing right next to an old yeller.
It makes me think that he's supplementing the bad jokes with his reactions to try to get the audience to laugh at him laughing instead of the actual joke, like a really bad version of a laugh track.
Former President Trump said, "I do great with the suburban housewives." In fact, he recently found out that was his most viewed category. And that's the picture they use. A friend told me.
Meanwhile, Colbert has this weird gimmick where one of his musicians is mic'd up and you can hear his reactions louder than the rest of the audience.
That's right. Easy D.
Easy D.
Easy D. Easy D, which I think used to be Trump's rapper name back in the 80s. I think he and Jeff Sessions had a rapper new wave band together, I think, there for a while.
This guy also laughs like the Jared Leto Joker, so minus extra points for making me think about that.
So, painted a picture. So,
liberal smugness and fake edginess. These hosts play into the liberal coastal elite stereotype. Their entire shtick oozes know-it-all, holier-than-thou, how dare you, sir, politics.
If you think this kind of thing only happens in states so rural their capital is a trivia question, allow me to ruin your day.
Now, almost every talk show host is going to be smug and confident. Stewart did it for sure, and Colbert's character played into the smugness of Republican news hosts. Me being smug is probably half the reason you even watch my videos. People love seeing their side shit-talk the other side with confidence and gusto. But being smug while also being hopelessly lame and unfunny mixes like oil and countries that want to remain sovereign. The unfortunate truth is that I agree with 99% of what all of these hosts on all of these shows are saying. They're progressive, I'm progressive, and they're talking about voting rights and abortion in ways that I align with. But if you follow every fact with a bad joke, it totally undercuts your ethos.
Shkreli jacking up the price of Daraprim by 5,000%. It was 100% legal, even though it feels like it shouldn't be. It's like when they sell you a Planet Fitness membership. How is that legal? They're like, look, we got 3 dumbbells, half a shower, and you can never leave. Now go get the body of your dreams in this house of nightmares.
What's the deal with airplane food?
But what really pisses me off is the fake edginess. Part of what made Stewart and Colbert great were their more edgy takes on the news that you couldn't get from the regular pundits. Swearing and outbursts and racism.
Oh, I love tea. It's so good for you.
Some of these newer shows try to emulate that edginess, but then neuter themselves in an attempt to be PC. Pearl clutching at edgy jokes that Republicans make is bad enough. It does nothing to shame them, and it makes you look weaker. But these shows go even further and make themselves look like the cuck stereotypes that Republicans make fun of so much. For example, Stephen Colbert has had this weird heel turn, where now he completely toes the Democrat Party line and sucks Biden's dick at all times. The old Colbert would have been all over Joe Biden's constant gaffes, but now...
Turns out he's not just old. Herr said the president could be described as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with poor memory. Kind of going off-road in a report about classified documents. Your Honor, we, the jury, have reached a verdict. We find the defendant not guilty of murder, but he is ugly and his mother dresses him funny.
Whoa, don't question Joe Biden's memory. Don't you know that he's actually super coherent and, dare I say, badass?
Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
For my reaction to that, join me over at the Damn Cam. Damn!
A few moments later.
For what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Seth Meyers has a show called Jokes Seth Can't Tell. It's just a bunch of jokes about black people or gay people, and the premise is that Seth isn't allowed to say them because he's a straight white male.
I'm black. And I'm gay.
And we're both women.
And I'm not. So here's how it works. I'll read the setups to these jokes, and Amber and Jenny will read the punchlines. Here we go. An African-American museum in Illinois is searching for a new executive director.
I think I'm qualified to do that, said a white guy.
It's a bit that's dead on arrival, and it doesn't help that having two different people say a joke totally ruins the timing and delivery. It's actually a shame, because Seth came from SNL's Weekend Update, which now has a bit where the black and white co-hosts write jokes for each other, and it's actually pretty funny.
We're making each other read jokes live on air that the other person has never seen before.
Warner Brothers is producing a new movie in which Superman is black. And a black Superman actually makes a lot of sense when you remember that Superman was abandoned by his parents as a baby.
If you want to see something that totally embodies the entire toothless, fake liberal edginess, look no further than Samantha Bee. First of all, the name of her show is Full Frontal. Whoa, like a full nude scene. Uncensored. Naked. In your face. With a name like that, you surely wouldn't get a bunch of lame Weenie Hut Jr. jokes.
And nobody has adapted to that reality better than Speaker of the House and faithful husky Paul Ryan.
One time, Samantha Bee was criticizing Donald Trump and Ivanka for their shitty immigration policy, and she called Ivanka a feckless cunt.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
And I think that sort of criticism is fine. Just say what you feel. Don't hold back. That's what I liked about the old shows. But because she used a misogynistic no-no word, she had to go and apologize to Ivanka. And then to all women who may have been offended by her no-no word.
It is a word I have used on the show many times, hoping to reclaim it. This time, I used it as an insult. I crossed the line, I regret it, and I do apologize for that.
The worst is when they pretend like it's just too edgy.
Because you'd be in jail.
Oh. I wonder if... We're probably gonna have to cut this, but I'm like, can his dealer get to the White House? Whatever.
Like, was that really so bad that you had to cut it, Trevor? Because it's still in the show. Almost like it was so safe that you could air it on primetime television that is deemed appropriate for teenagers. So yeah, these shows aren't even as edgy as 12-year-olds on 4chan, but they act like they're barely allowed to get away with what they're saying. Even the ones that aren't on network TV, like John Oliver on HBO, famous for its more raunchy programming with nudity and gore, just makes safe horny jokes about fucking Adam Driver or the Jollibee.
Yes, please. Jollibee can get it.
Come on, guys, at least Jimmy Fallon did blackface. Before I get into Jon Stewart's return, I do want to go over some honorable mentions. The first is Jordan Klepper. Klepper did have his own spin-off from The Daily Show that didn't do well and was cancelled, but I did want to include him as an honorable mention, because yeah, he's smug and liberal, but I love his segment of interviewing random Trump supporters and getting them to say dumb stuff.
You're pro-life.
Of course.
Why aren't you wearing a mask?
I mean, again, it's a personal choice, I think. If everybody was wearing them and everybody said put a mask on, I would respect everybody's wishes and put it on. We're not sheep. We're lions.
Not cheap. You're not cheap. But if everybody here was wearing masks.
If everybody was wearing, but again, we're not sheeple.
You're not sheeple.
We're not.
So you're going to look at what everybody's doing and you're going to follow
That's
along.
it.
Is it deceptively edited and probably out of context? Sure. Could you do the exact same thing with Joe Biden supporters? Of course, but it's almost always funny, and he's great at making people hang themselves with their own words. The second is, of course, John Oliver. Despite my complaints about his run-on jokes, he has very focused segments on particular topics. I've heard complaints that he gets stuff wrong, but for the most part, I think his episodes are entertainingly informative. And at the end of his shows, he usually tries to engage in some sort of activism, like he actually gives a shit.
You are about to watch me give away $15 million. You, Oprah!
And bonus points because that one time he tried to make Jimmy Fallon look bad by asking his Amazon Alexa about Amazon union rights.
Alexa, how bad are Amazon working conditions?
Alexa, stop. Sure. Alexa, stop. Here we go. All right,
no,
I have to.
Alexa. No, Alexa. Alexa, what is union
No, Alexa,
busting?
this is me time now.
So now we get to the return of Jon Stewart, and I have good news and bad news about his return to The Daily Show. The good news is, as far as I can tell, he's just as good as when he left. His timing and delivery, his writer's jokes, nothing has dropped in quality. And unlike Colbert, he's not toning down his criticism of the Democratic Party.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare,
Anybody can talking.
The bad news is, he's just as good as he used to be. The reason that's bad is that it's just not good enough anymore. When I went back to watch tons of old Colbert and Stewart, it made sense that I wasn't feeling the exact same satisfaction watching them call out all the dumb stuff in politics, because those politics are old. But the jokes didn't seem to be as funny as I found them back then, whether I had heard them before or not. And I felt the exact same way watching the new Jon Stewart. Not because he had changed, but because I did. I liked these shows because they said what no one else was saying. They called out people in a way that made me feel heard. But now, I have the internet. Seconds after anything happens, millions of people are already making jokes and memes about it on Twitter. A streamer can react to it in real time. By the time one of these shows is written, approved, filmed, and broadcast, I've already seen 100 great jokes about what happened, and 1,000 bad ones. Comedy is all about subverting your expectations, and almost nothing that these shows put out is surprising in comparison to what I can get online. 2005 edgy is not 2024 edgy. Our brains have been rotted by Zoomer humor. Like, oh great, you called Donald Trump out for his silly mistake. Well, I've been cyberstalking Marjorie Taylor Greene and replying to her posts with pregnant Waluigi fan art. Sure, it's great to catalog political hypocrisy, but now I have armies of internet autists that can immediately call someone out with a video or a quote in response to any statement that they made in bad faith. Now, of course, this has nothing to do with the quality of the shows we talked about. Those are still bad for all the reasons I laid out. Jon Stewart, old and new, isn't bad, but he doesn't have the same punch that he used to. Shows like John Oliver and Some More News can still put out lasting and relevant content because they prepare specific topics weeks ahead of time, usually not about breaking news, and they can give you a new perspective that you might not have considered before. But the oomph of the Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert political talk show format is gone. Maybe forever. For every Jon Stewart, there's 5 other imitators that can't even come close to as good as he can be. And even he can't keep up with our evolving technology and ability to shitpost. Political talk shows were an important part of my childhood, and the developing political landscape of the 2000s. Stewart and Colbert did amazing work, both on and outside of their shows. And they absolutely paved the way for people like me to get involved in politics and engage with the hardest and most absurd political topics. But it's okay that they're not as important or heavy-hitting anymore. It's okay that these two shows were lightning in a bottle that we'll never have again. The fading relevance of the political talk show was inevitable, and the things that have dulled their edge can take their place, whatever form that might be. TikToks, tweets, or YouTubers. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like if you did, subscribe if you want more, leave a comment if there's a topic you want to see me cover, and if you're a Samantha Bee fan, please use code SOY on lobotomy.com for a 20% discount.